Okay, in this video, we're going to have a look at putting borders on a cell. So on the ribbon here, under the font group, in the home tab, by the way, you can actually see all these options. So if I'm on a particular cell, you can obviously highlight a range of cells as well, but I've just got one cell selected here. If I click on bottom border, it'll add a bottom border. Now, while that cell is selected, you can't actually see the bottom border. If I click off it, you can see there it's added a bottom border to that cell. Now, if I'm on that cell and I go and I select, let's say, for example, a top border as well, when I click away, you can see it now has a top and a bottom border. So the point is that when you add these different options here, it's not going to remove what other borders there were. If I go now and click left border, it then just adds a left border to the existing borders. It doesn't make any changes. Now, if I go onto this cell and I right click on it and I go into the format cells option and I select the border tab over there, you can actually see the borders. It shows here that there's a top border, a left border, a right border, and if I click, I can set up exactly how I want these borders. If I click on it once, it's going to be on. If I click it again, it's going to be off. So if I click on the right border here, it then adds a right border. So let's just have a look at that. So if I say okay, you can see it's done that. It's removed that left border and it's put a right border. Let's just go back into it. I'm just going to use the expander to go into it. And what I want to point out is that in this particular one, you've got a lot more options within the border tab of the format cells box, because here you can set the type of line. So let's say I wanted a much thicker line on the right border. I could click on this thicker line here and then select the right border, and you can see that line now becomes thicker. I can also have a strike through that goes basically diagonally across the cell and the other way as well. So if I click in that area over there, it'll basically put a line through that way. So if I say okay now, you can see I've got these strike throughs but no left border, and I've got that double line. It's actually a double line on the right border. Just going back to that format cells again. Remember, this was a double line here. This is actually the darker line. So let's assume I wanted just a darker line. I could actually click on these ones here, and you can see it's now converted it, and I can do the same here. Now, if I click again, let's click on there and leave it like that. So we've got a dark line there, a dark one there, and say okay. You can actually see how that's now formatted that cell. But let's assume that I wanted to do it not on a cell, but on this whole yellow area, yellow highlighted area. I wanted to put a border around. So just note there's no border at the moment. If I basically highlight the range, and if I click on this drop down, this basically gives me some quick options. So let's say I wanted thick outside borders. Now remember, outside borders means that between the cells, there won't be any borders. So if I click on thick outside borders and I click away, you can see it's put a thick outside border around that range that I selected. If I go ahead and I select that range again and I wanted to put borders inside of it, if I click on this drop down now, and you can see here there's different options. So we could say all borders. So all borders means that even within, not just on the outside of the range, but even within the cells. So I want a line, for example, going down here, and across as well. If I then go and select that option of all borders, you can actually see now it's got all borders. And so there's borders that are running inside it. And what that all borders did, though, it overrode the dark border on the outside. So the order in which you do things is important in some instances, because all borders doesn't just add on, it basically overwrites whatever existing borders there were, including dark borders. But I could now go ahead and highlight that same range and say I now want to have thick outside borders after having put in the inner borders. Now you can see the outside border is thicker and you've got the inner borders. You can also, once you've highlighted the range, you can also on this drop down, if you go all the way here, you can, for example, erase the borders. So if I click on this option here, erase border, it'll bring up an erase tool, and now I need to drag it to which areas I want to erase. So if I basically select all of these areas, you can see, and I let go, it's basically removed those borders. So that's the one way in which you can actually remove a border. Is if I click on this drop down and I go all the way to the bottom and I select more borders, it'll basically bring up the same dialog box under format cells. And here, remember, this gives you a lot more control over the borders and a lot more features and functions. So for example, besides the different types of lines, so let's assume we were going to go with some dash lines, and we're just going to have borders we have borders only running down the columns and on the outside. So this way, there won't be any borders running because I don't have this line over here. I'm going to remove it. It means there'll be no borders running along the rows. It'll only be running down the columns, right? And what we can also do is we can even change the color. So let's assume that we wanted a green border. So now we've got, now remember, I first have to select the color and then actually click on this. You can see that was still sitting as black. So only now as I'm clicking on them, it's actually changing to green. So when you're selecting a color, make sure you select the color first, then actually add the borders. And what we'll actually do here is we'll select a dark border, let's say on either end, right? So on both of these ends here, we'll have a solid green border, just for illustrative purposes, but across we'll have the dashed border. So if I now say OK, you can actually see there's a dark green border there on either end, and then there's these dashed green borders running around it on the top and on the bottom, as well as on the columns as well. You can also make use of the presets in that detailed border tab. So in the detailed border tab, you've got presets. So you can, for example, say I want to, once I've got this line selected, if I click on the inside, it will then put it all on the inside, or I can just do an outline, or I can remove them all using the preset. So if I click on that, it will remove all of the borders, and then I can choose, for example, let's say I wanted an outline. Okay, let's do the inside first. Let's say we wanted a green inside, so the insides are going to be green. Then let's say we wanted to have a dark blue on the outside. So we have dark blue on the outside, and now I say okay, you can actually see there's a dark blue on the outside. It's not that easy to see that it's blue, but it is, and then the insides are all green. So you have basically total flexibility in terms of how you want to add borders. Okay, so just to recap, in order to erase the borders, we can simply just highlight the range again. We can also simply click on this drop down and select more borders at the bottom, and over here we can actually say okay, we don't want any borders, none. That'll basically remove all borders from this range, and if I say okay, it's back to how it was at the start.